Well, let's talk a little bit more now about the role forensics will play in this case, or is playing in this case. I'm joined in studio by Chad Thomas. He's the CEO of IRS Forensic Investigations. He's an investigation veteran who's worked in an intelligence capacity in the South African Police and the SANDF. Chad, thank you very much. Quite an extensive career there in these types of investigations. And let's start with that question. Just how important are forensics in a case like this, especially where the accused has admitted, yes, I did shoot through the door. And in this case, we're trying to establish why he actually did it. How does forensics play a part in that case?
Well, if we look at the word forensics, firstly, it's a very broad term. There's so many different types of forensics that takes place in an investigation. You've got ballistics, you've got blood splatter analysis, you've got the different types of forensic investigations that look at tools that have been used, etc. In this particular instance, it's common cause that Oscar Pistorius did shoot the door. Yes. We know that. Yes. What's now been brought into question is whether he went back, put on his prosthesis legs, came back, and then decided to try break down the door. What Colonel Vermeulen was trying to show in court yesterday was the fact that he believed he was not on his prosthesis at that time, that he was on his stumps. Now, what needs to be remembered, and what's very important, is that the Oscar Pistorius defense team have widely publicized the fact that they're bringing in world experts on forensics to counter the state's claim that he was on their stumps, etc. And I think Barry Rue yesterday, his main intention was trying to make it seem that our South African police services, in terms of world standards, are inferior, and that perhaps they didn't do a thorough investigation and take into consideration other points. What we also need to have to take into consideration is the fact that once the state has presented their case, one of two things is going to happen. Either Barry Rue is going to say not sufficient evidence has been presented to prove that it was a premeditated murder and request what's called a Section 174, which means that instead of proceeding with the case, they're going to ask the judge and her two assessors to make a decision there and then to have the charges withdrawn, or they will proceed. And I think yesterday's intent is that if they can't prove that the state hasn't proven a good enough case and not proceed with the 174 and go ahead with presenting their defense arguments, is that they want to present forensic teams from outside of South Africa, so-called first world countries, be it America, be it the UK, to try counter whatever claims Colonel Vermeulen made yesterday.
So in terms of us, or in terms of them finding this inexplicable footprint that is on the door and sort of other little marks and scratches that cannot be explained, is that something that is enough, or could it be sort of enough to get to sort of get this falling into the defense's lap?
Look, we know from the outset that the original investigating officer allocated to the matter from the local police station did not wear booties on the scene. We know that he contaminated the scene. We also know that the door was originally taken down. It was most probably put into the SAP-13, which is the evidence lockup. But we also know it was then kept in somebody's office for just over or just under a week, in a situation that would contaminate the evidence. It wasn't kept in the correct environment. They keep on going on about the preservation of evidence. It's actually the chain of evidence. You have to have a key chain of evidence when it was taken into custody, and how that custody of the object, or whatever the evidence was kept, handed over, etc. And they're going to try use that as a loophole.
Now, what difference does it make? Let's go back to the actual bullet holes in this door and where where he might have broken down the door with the cricket bat. What difference does it make as to whether he was on his stumps or whether he had put on his prosthetic legs? He has said, I shot through the door, and then obviously tried to break down the door with a cricket bat. Does it matter where he did it and what he's saying? He could have been confused at the time and not realizing the sort of sequence of events as to when he put those prosthetic legs on.
Well, I agree with you on that, because you must remember he didn't put on his prosthesis when he went onto the balcony to collect the fans, etc.
Yes.
Prior in the evening. We've seen videos when he was still one of South Africa's most favorite sons, where he was running around as a youngster on his stumps in a garden, and he was running quite normally considering he only had the stumps. So I don't quite see what they're trying to say there, and whether he was on his stumps or his prosthesis or not. Because why would one take the time to shoot the door, go back, put on your prosthesis and come back? Surely you want to know what's happened there and then. You're not going to wait. So I'm a bit confused about where the defense is going with this.
But like you said, they probably could be using just alleged police incompetence and not actually tying in, and maybe that's actually what we'll see in your experience. And where do you think, or how could they actually now be sort of trying to use police behavior in terms of what you said earlier? How could they in any way possibly tie this in today when things proceed?
If they can show that there's carbon fibers within that door, if they can show that there's portion of a sock, because they said they found that they believe there's a fragment of a sock as well, it's just going to cast doubt on the SAPS's capability of running a correct forensic examination of the door, etc. And it just helps them if they do decide to go the Section 174 route once the state is rested.
So just discrediting witnesses,
Just to
basically,
discredit
is
the
that what,
witness.
and not proving about why or how this actually happened.
100%.
All right, well, that clears it up. So I'm not really not understanding. Chad is also just as confused as to where they're going. Thank you very much, Chad Thomas. And he is a forensic investigator and independent organized crime investigator as well, shedding some light on this for us.
Know more about your world.
eNCA.com